Hello everyone, welcome. We are discussing the final section of the Kybalion, so this is exciting. And so our topic today is mental gender and why it's so misunderstood. And as you know, this topic frustrates me. So it's going to be an interesting stream. And the reason why it frustrates me is because this is so misunderstood. And when it's understood in the incorrect way, when it's misunderstood, it can result in very dangerous consequences. A lot of fracture and disunity in the world. However, when it is understood correctly, it can lead to a lot of understanding about yourself, the world, others, and how reality works. So this is going to be an interesting stream as we dive into this. And not only are we going to be talking about mental gender and why it's so misunderstood, but a lot more topics as well. So as always, remember to like this video and share, subscribe, all of those wonderful things. And if you have a question, use the super chat feature, and I'll be answering questions via the super chat feature as we go along. And as well, I will be periodically jumping into the chat section to see if there are any comments there as well and to chat with you guys. The book will be on screen, so you can follow along if you would like. And before we get started, I'm going to say hello to everyone real quick. Hello, let's see who is here. Hello, Jordy and Coyote, Sandra, Stephanie, Elise, Blissful Sprout, Moonbat, Jeffrey, Loretto. Hello everyone. So good to see you. Kizzy says, I'm glad he's in a really good mood tonight. Am I ever in an angry? Am I not sometimes in a good mood? I don't know. Susan, our moderator, is here. Hello. Wow, Angela right off the bat with a $50 super chat says, for you and Hyperianism, Morgue, hail New Terra. Wow, thank you so much, Angela. You're awesome. Right off the bat, you get a color change there. And everyone, let's spam the sign of New Terra in the comment section for Angela. I'll start off there. Thank you so much, Angela. You are awesome. David and Dahlia and Jordy, welcome. Let's spam those here. Yeah, see, it just popped up right here, and you currently have the top donor position. Awesome. Spam those signs of New Terra for Angela. Okay, awesome. So good to see you guys. And we are going to get into the book reading right now. So let's start. And let's see where this goes. So this chapter is gender. The next chapter is actually mental gender. So let's dive right into this. I'm gonna have quite a lot to say about this. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The Kybalion. Elana Wiles, thank you for helping us wake up the world. You have unlocked loyalty badges. The great seventh Hermetic principle, the principle of gender, embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything. That the masculine and feminine principles are ever present and active in all phases of phenomena, on each and every plane of life. And what do we mean by planes of life? Someone asked me this question. It was Wrath who said he wasn't sure what they meant by planes of life. This was, I believe, in our, not the last reading, but the reading of that, the reading before that. So Kybalion number 3, I believe. Where different planes, they're just talking about sort of different levels of consciousness. So minerals to plant life to animals to human life and beyond. Different planes in the terminology of the Kybalion. In Hyperianism, we don't really talk in those terms, but that's what they mean by the Kybalion. So they're saying in every level, gender manifests. At this point, we think it's well to call your attention to the fact that gender, in its Hermetic sense, and sex, in the ordinarily accepted use of the term, are not the same. So now, I want you guys to remember that this book was written in the early 1900s. And so, I'm gonna give them some credit. So, at the time it was written in, it was pretty forward-thinking and pretty ahead of its time. However, as we'll see, for today's world, now it's a little bit It's still too binary regarding masculine and feminine, and we'll see why. The word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. A moment's consideration will show you that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex, the latter referring to the physical distinctions between male and female living things. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a certain plane of the great physical plane, the plane of organic life. So they're saying, look at gender as being a force, and sex having to do with your avatar. So masculine and feminine, male and female sex would be if you have a dick or a pussy. But they're talking about gender in terms of a force, a type of force. So again, the word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. A moment's consideration will show you that the word has a much broader and more general meaning than the term sex, the latter referring to the physical distinctions between male and female living things, physical distinctions, genitalia, etc. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a certain plane of the great physical plane, the plane of organic life. We wish to impress these distinctions upon your minds for the reason that certain writers who have acquired a smattering of the Hermetic philosophy have sought to identify this seventh Hermetic principle with wild and fanciful and often reprehensible theories and teachings regarding sex. So they're saying a lot of people get confused between gender and sex, so make sure you understand that we are not talking about, male and female genitalia and avatars, but rather a force, a type of force. The office of gender is solely that of creating, producing, generating, etc., and its manifestations are visible on every plane of phenomena. It is somewhat difficult to produce proofs of this along scientific lines, for the reason that the science has not yet recognized this principle as of universal application. But still, some proofs are forthcoming from scientific sources. In the first place, we find a distinct manifestation of the principle of gender among the corpuscles, ions, or electrons, which constitute the basis of matter as science now knows the latter, and which by forming certain combinations form the atom, which until lately was regarded as final and indivisible. So, previous to the time of this book, people thought that atoms were indivisible, but guess what? They were able to split the atom, and they were able to see that the atom was composed of electrons and protons and neutrons. Later on, they were able to see that the neutrons and the protons could also be opened further and were composed of quarks. So anyway, what we're going to see here, and the real important thing to understand about, and this is a difficult thing to vocalize, but basically they're not wrong. It's just the way that they are going to describe it is very confusing. When you talk of forces in terms of gender, a lot of confusion can result because you're applying a symbol and a metaphor to a mathematical process. And so if we look at the mathematical process themselves, to start saying that one is male and one is female is a metaphor. It's a symbol. And this can lead to a lot of confusion because people will take the symbol and metaphor as being true, just like religion. And if you apply a certain aspect of it to being male or female, you can run into a lot of problems. You know what? I'm going to show you. So basically, okay, let's say you have two forces, positive and negative. That's what they actually are. They're positive and negative forces. To name the positive force male and the negative force female, now you're getting into metaphorical and symbolic territory. And, you know, when you have opposing forces, it's just a positive and a negative, a this and a that, a one and the other. And to apply, male and female to one or the other, you have to remember, if it helps you, it can help a lot of people. Putting things in these metaphorical terms are helpful. But you have to be very, very careful. So this is what they did sort of with yin and yang, right? They're just, there's these two forces, yin and yang, right? Positive, negative, this and that, yin, yang. It's just a way of expressing that there's two forces that interact with each other. But then to say that they're male and female, it's not necessarily wrong per se, but you have to remember that it's a metaphor. And the reason why, let me look up for you, I'm going to show you a diagram real quick. And show you exactly why this can lead one into trouble. So if you look at this here. So if you have yin and yang, and many people define these differently, but just to say, if you say that yin is negative, feminine, passive, intuitive, dark, night, cold, soft, slow, moon. Yang is positive, masculine, active, logical, light, day, hot, hard, fast, sun. You see where you can get into trouble, because then some people will misunderstand this and think, oh, then that must mean all women are intuitive and all men are logical. And so inherently men are logical and inherently women are not. Then you can get dangerous. You can get stuck in a trap of sexism. And this is also where you can let's take a look at right brain versus left brain. Okay? Right hemisphere versus left hemisphere. Let me see if you guys can see this. Right hemisphere versus left hemisphere. So many people would say that left hemisphere is masculine, right hemisphere is feminine. Well, left is analysis, logic, facts, sequencing, mathematics, language. Right is creativity, intuition, feelings, imagination, daydreaming, arts. So now, is it true that as a whole, do women tend to be more creative, more intuitive, and more in touch with their feelings? And do men tend to be more analytical, more logical, more interested in mathematics, sequencing? Perhaps. Perhaps. But do you see how it's not always that way? There are plenty of logical women, and there are plenty of creative and intuitive men. Okay? So do you see where the danger comes in stereotyping? Because what the Hermeticists are saying is that this is a law of reality. And you have to be very, very careful when you say there is a law of reality. Because laws don't have big exceptions like this. So if we want to be metaphorical, if we're interpreting dreams or something like this, if we want to be metaphorical, sure, we could say that the left brain is masculine and the right brain is feminine, as long as we understand that is a metaphor. If we want to be precise, then we shouldn't use metaphors, and we should just call it left hemisphere and right hemispheric functions. Because, right, if we don't, like, just think about if an unintelligent person thinks, oh, left is masculine, right is feminine, then you're going to get all these trouble that we have today where oh, men can't cry, men can't show emotion, and women should be caretakers, right? Do you see the danger? So we have to be very, very careful when we use these metaphors and know that they are indeed metaphors. So hopefully that makes sense. I saw some questions. Jackie Sieb, thank you so much for helping us wake up the world. says Rocksteady, thank you for your service. You're welcome, my friend. And Disturb702, thank you as well, says, this question may be dumb, but if we can only understand the world based on our physical senses, how do we learn about what our senses can't show us? Okay, let me answer your question, and then we'll jump back into the reading, because that question is a little bit off topic, but let me answer it real quick. So how do we understand the world based on our physical senses? If we only understand the world based on our physical senses, how do we learn about what our senses can't show us? This is the difference between empiricism and rationalism. So the true nature of reality is a mathematical reality, and mathematics has nothing to do with the senses. For example, I can understand 2 + 2 = 4 without seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, or anything like that. In my mind, if I were in a if all my senses were totally locked out, I could still do mathematics in my mind. And this is a mathematical reality. So we can work out what existence is beyond the empirical physical reality by unlocking the secrets of ontological mathematics. We have the source formula, which is the equation for all existence, and by unlocking the secrets of the source formula, mathematically, we can understand all of reality. And thus, we need not rely on the senses. This is why Hyperianism is not an empirical philosophy. It is a rational philosophy. So, rationalism, you are able to go beyond the senses. Empiricism is a religion and a faith of the senses. So, great question. Fantastic question. I actually have a video called How to Think. Watch that video, and that will help. Okay, so let's get back to the reading here. And speaking of the source formula, we're going to take a look at the source formula in terms of masculine and feminine. Jumping into the comments right here, because I see that Jordy says analytic truths of reason do not require proof. Interesting observation, Jordy, and I see where you're going with that. But it's actually analytic truths of reason are proofs. They don't require empirical evidence. I see where you were going with that, and so I know that you. I know that that's what you meant. But just to clarify, analytic truths of reason are proofs themselves. They are used to deductively prove things. They're statements that are used in proofs. So you again, 2 + 2 = 4. It's an analytic truth of reason, and you don't need empirical evidence for it. And in fact, you can't have empirical evidence for it because it's something that is relegated to the realm of mind, and it expresses itself in the physical. Anyway, let's get back to the let's get back to the reading here, because I don't want to get too off topic. So, but hopefully that made sense to everyone. Why it's important to understand that when we're speaking about gender, that we always understand that we're talking metaphorically about forces. By the way, if you're watching on Facebook, guys, please go subscribe on YouTube. The link is in the caption of the video. Help us reach 100,000 subscribers. So go subscribe. Okay. The latest word of science, remember this book was written in the early 1900s, is that the atom is composed of a multitude of corpuscles, electrons, revolving around each other and vibrating at a high degree and intensity. It's a little more complicated than that, but let's just go with that. But the accompanying statement is made that the formation of the atom is really due to the clustering of negative corpuscles around a positive one. Again, a little more complicated than that. In an atom, depending on the atom, we have electrons, which are negatively charged, protons, which are positively charged, and then the neutron. The positive corpuscles seeming to exert a certain influence upon the negative corpuscles, causing the latter to assume certain combinations and thus create or generate an atom. This is in line with the most ancient Hermetic teachings, which have always identified the masculine principle of gender with the positive and the feminine with the negative poles of electricity. Now do you see again? All right, see, they're associating masculine with positive poles of electricity and negative with the feminine poles of electricity. This is where you have to be careful, because we're starting to go into a mythos. It's kind of like saying the positive poles are angels and the negative poles are demons. Do you see? It's like, what? We don't even need to go. Do you see how we're stepping away from what it is truthfully in and of itself and starting to apply metaphor to it, right? You can see this excellent picture. So you could imagine, this picture is not completely accurate, so don't take it that I am saying that it is, but you could say, look, in the bottom section, you could, let's say if in the bottom section this is exactly what it, what existence is, then above it you could see this would be the metaphorical representation. Okay, this is a metaphorical representation. You don't want to think that there's actually a male and female, an Adam and Eve. You see the danger? Okay. Now, a word at this point regarding this identification. The public mind has formed an entirely erroneous impression regarding the qualities of the so-called negative poles of electrified or magnetized matter. The term positive and negative are very wrongly applied to this phenomenon by science. The word positive means something real and strong, as compared with a negative unreality or weakness. Nothing is further from the real facts of electrical phenomenon. The so-called negative pole of the battery is really the pole in and by which the generation or production of new forms and energies is manifested. There is nothing negative about it. The best scientific authorities now use the word cathode in place of negative. The word cathode coming from the Greek root meaning descent, the path of generation. From the cathode pole emerged the swarm of electrons or corpuscles. From the same pole emerged those wonderful rays which have revolutionized scientific concepts during the past decade. The cathode pole is the mother of all the strange phenomena which have rendered useless the old textbooks, and which have caused many long accepted theories to be relegated to the scrap pile of scientific speculation. The cathode, or negative pole, is the mother principle of electrical phenomena, and of the finest forms of matter as yet known to science. So you see, we are justified in refusing to use the term negative in our consideration of the subject, and in insisting upon substituting the word feminine for the old term. The facts of the case bear us out in this, without taking the Hermetic teachings into consideration. And so we shall use the word feminine in the place of negative, in speaking of that pole of activity. The latest scientific teachings are that the creative corpuscles of electrons are feminine. Science says they are composed of negative electricity. We say they are composed of feminine energy. So you see, I mean, it's very arbitrary. It's very arbitrary. Sure, if you want, instead of saying negative energy, negative electricity, you could say feminine. A feminine corpuscle becomes, you see, it's putting things in terms of a story that can help humans understand it. But we have to always be very careful when we do that, because that's how religions start. That's how things like sexism can begin. That's how things like racism can begin. That's how things like homophobia can begin, right? Because, if everything's male and female, then males and females should only go together, right? Again, remember, they're not talking about sex, but they're talking about gender, but still, do you see how that can lead down a scary path if people take it literally? Oh, if female energy is negative and associated with electrons, and feminine is and masculine and positive protons, and they go together, then homosexuality must be wrong because it's against the law of reality. You see where the danger lies and why we have to be so careful. Because I know so many people are going to be like, but they're not being, and I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that it can be really, really helpful. Just like, so in Inner Star Actualization, we talk a lot about integrating masculine and feminine qualities. But we have to remember that it's all arbitrary. Really, and the idea to integrate both masculine and feminine qualities is to break you of the habit of thinking in terms of masculine and feminine. Right? That's part of what Inner Star Actualization is all about, and integrating the mirror self. It's about breaking the habit of putting things into male and female boxes. Okay, a feminine corpuscle becomes detached from, and someone, Rose, and who else? Rose and Lost Munchkin. Thank you for helping us wake up the world. Okay, let us continue. Make sure you smash like, guys. Hit that like button. Let's get those likes up. We're at 111. I want 222. 222. Okay. And if you're on Facebook, go over to YouTube. Link is in the caption of the video. Where did my book go? Where's my book? Where's my book? Ah, here's my book. Okay, so we're talking about how this can be very dangerous. And oh my God. Okay, well, it's about to pop up. Yeah, look at Scullywag just donated $100. Says, I have to go. You all have a good day. Keep spreading your knowledge, Morgue. Take care. Thank you so much, my friend. You are fucking awesome. Thank you. You get it. We get it. We're going in. We're gonna be Slytherin because of you. Thank you so much, my friend. Wow. Okay, let's spam. Wow, $100. You are awesome. Let's in the comments. Let's spam the Omega Sphere. Let's spam the Omega Sphere for Scullywag. I'll start it off here. Bam. Let's spam the Omega Sphere for Scullywag. That's a killer face mask you have there as well, my friend. Yeah, let's get those Omega Spheres going. You're awesome. Big thank you so much. Can't tell you guys how much that helps. Super chats, the donations, things like that. That's how I'm able to do this. It means the world to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, look at all those Omega Spheres for Scullywag. You get the top donor spot for the stream here. You're killing it, my friend. Okay. Look at all those Omega Spheres. I love that. Hell yes. Okay. So now we got the green light. I always feel like I'm teaching a Defense Against the Dark Arts class when we got the green light going. But that's okay. That's okay. Oh, funny thing. Speaking of Harry Potter, when I went to where did I go? Harry Potter World in Universal Studios. So I went to Harry Potter World at Universal Studios, and I went with someone who's very near and dear to me. But anyways, I went to Harry Potter Land with Universal Studios, and whenever the individual I went there with, if you know me, it's Uriel. When I went with Uriel, and when she would go to the restroom or whatever, she would leave me alone. I would be alone, and I felt so fucking awkward because I was there and in Harry Potter Land, dressed in all black, long white hair, and I also had an umbrella with a skull handle, and I looked very much like Draco Malfoy's father. I don't remember, Lucius Malfoy, and I could tell that people were like looking at me weird, trying to figure out if I was part of the staff, like if I worked Harry Potter world, if I was like, you know, one of the characters. So yeah, that was sort of awkward. I would, you know, try and go hide in a corner so people wouldn't want to take photos with me as something like that. Anyway, let's get back to the reading here. Okay. A feminine corpuscle becomes detached from, or rather leaves, a masculine corpuscle and starts on a new career. It actively seeks a union with a masculine corpuscle, being urged thereto by the natural impulse to create new forms of matter or energy. One writer goes so far as to use the term, it once seeks of its own volition a union. This detachment and uniting form the basis of the greater part of the activities of the chemical world. When the feminine corpuscle unites with a masculine corpuscle, a certain process is begun. The feminine particle vibrates rapidly under the influence of the masculine energy, and the circle rapidly around the latter. The result is the birth of a new atom. This new atom, Edward Noble and Mike Hoover, thank you for helping us wake up the world. The new atom is really composed of a union of the masculine and feminine electrons or corpuscles. But when the union is formed of the atom is a separate thing, having certain properties, but no longer manifesting the properties of free electricity. The process of detachment or separation of the feminine electrons is called ionization. These electrons or corpuscles are the most active workers in nature's field, arising from their union or combinations, manifesting the varied phenomenon of light, heat, electricity, magnetism, attraction, repulsion, chemical affinity, and the reverse, and similar phenomena. And all this arises from the operation of the principle of gender on the plane of energy. Now, once again, you see how this is dangerous, where they're saying, well, the masculine and the feminine energy meet and a union is formed, and that's how creation is given. And once again, you could see the danger here in trying to simplify things and people taking it literally and then coming to dangerous conclusions like, oh, homosexuality is wrong or something. Like, and again, I know they're talking about forces, but people will misunderstand this. So it's very important to realize that this is all metaphor and things like this. See, we can apply this to everything. We could apply this to everything. Like even in our diagram of the separation and unity, right? So there are a lot of people in esoteric circles who regard separation as being feminine and the return being masculine. But we could just as easily say that separation is masculine and that return is feminine, because the return is a unit. You see, it's so arbitrary, and this is why we have to be very, very careful. And if you want to think of it that way in terms of metaphor, again, that's perfectly fine. Again, if we're talking about the unconscious is usually associated with feminine, the Great Mother, whereas consciousness is usually associated with masculine, like the director, right? And if you want to do that, that's fine to understand things metaphorically. Just like the ocean is usually associated with the unconscious. Because, being underneath the dark waves. But we just need to remember that that's metaphorical. And it's fine if you're having a dream. If you're having a dream and there's a woman in your dream, it's very possible that this has something to do with your unconscious. Because guess what? Your unconscious talks in symbols and metaphors, because our unconscious is shaped and conditioned by our culture and evolution and things like that. Like if you think of a woman in your mind right now, you usually, there's a schema that comes into your mind. There's a schema. Maybe long hair, makeup, wearing a dress. Does that really mean that that's what it means to be a woman? No. That's just what we have been conditioned and what the schema of our mind brings up when we think of the feminine. There's just different forces, right? There's just different forces. Someone may be dominant and someone may be submissive. Now, a lot of people will say that dominance is masculine and submissive is feminine. But do you see where that can get dangerous? So you can't put it into boxes, but it can be helpful sometimes. There's plenty of dominant women and there's plenty of submissive men. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with either. There's times to be dominant and there's times to be submissive. There are times when you should, fight to make sure that your idea gets through. And there are times when you should yield to someone who knows more than you do. Anyway, I hope you see where it's not wrong per se. And I hope you also see why it's very difficult to articulate this. Because what we're trying to do is mix story and metaphor with objective analytic truths. And that's always dangerous. And there's always going to be a problem because the two don't mesh. They're two different things. One is information and one is a subjective way of interpreting and understanding information. Just like a story. A metaphorical story is a subjective way of understanding information. Mike Hoover wants to know if when we split an atom, if we're not actually splitting a solid, but we're separating frequency. Yes, that's very correct. In terms of Hyperianism and ontological mathematics, all an atom actually is a structure of frequency. It's a wave structure. So this picture that people plant in individuals' minds of an atom being, well, here's this little electron, and here's this, proton and neutrons, and the electron goes around the atom, and it's like this little hard ball. That's completely wrong. That's another metaphor. What everything truly is frequency. So when someone says, oh, we're splitting an atom down to its component forms of electrons and protons, what we're really doing is, you're very right, just simply separating frequency patterns. That is because everything is a frequency pattern. An electron is just a structure of frequency. We have given that structure of frequency a certain name called electron. And do you see where even that gets dangerous? Because all that electron is a structure of frequency, a wave structure. But by giving it the name electron and drawing like a picture of it, of a little ball, that forms an image of our minds that all of reality is formed up of these little hard corpuscles, little hard balls bouncing into each other, which they are not. They're wave structures. So you see, it's very important to stay lucid and always understand that everything around us is a frequency pattern, a structure of frequency. So very good question, Mike. Once again, guys, if you are on Facebook, go over to YouTube, subscribe. That's where I interact in the comments. Do it. Link is in the caption of the video. Okay. And this chapter here is on gender. The next chapter is about mental gender, which we'll see is... Okay, so anyway, we're almost through this particular chapter. The part of the masculine principle seems to be that of directing a certain inherent energy toward the feminine principle, and thus starting into activity the creative process. But the feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all planes. And yet each principle is incapable... So, real quick, I want to say, so this is not... Right, so this is not, saying it's masculine and feminine is not completely accurate. But if you understand it's a metaphor, and thinking in that way helps you understand the process of reality, then it can be helpful. So if it's helping you to think in terms of masculine and feminine, to understand like the interplay of forces, that's awesome. That's great. Good. Good. Just remember that it is a metaphor. Okay? So yet each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. And so we're just talking about energies, things, forces that need each other. Forces that need each other. This can be applied to anything. Again, positive and negative, attraction, repulsion, the unconscious and the conscious. Right? You want the unconscious and the conscious to work together. And if that helps you, if it helps you understand that by calling the unconscious female and the conscious male, okay, fine. Just realize it's a metaphor. But do you see how it's about opposing forces that need to work together. And we can look in terms of, remember the source formula. Literally everything is based on the source formula, all right? Everything is based on the source formula. And the source formula has two waves. It has a sine and a cosine wave. So if you wanted to, could you call the sine wave feminine and the cosine wave masculine? I mean, sure, metaphorically if you want to, sure. Because the circle, for the circle to operate, for the circle to be a circle, for it to exist, it requires both the sine and the cosine wave. These are necessary to it. Okay? These are necessary to it. So if you wanted to metaphorically call the sine wave feminine and the cosine masculine to help in understanding, I hope that you're starting to see how this works. You have some, like, this is what exists. This is what exists. This is objective. This is true. This is the mathematical structure of existence, these waves. If you want to call one of these waves feminine and masculine, absolutely. Claire G says, thank you, Morgue. You're very welcome. Thank you for helping us wake up the world, Claire. You are awesome, my friend. So, if we... But see, I mean... But remember, metaphors always break down. So we just have to be careful. Okay. In some of the forms of life, the two principles are combined in one organism. For that matter, everything in the organic world manifests both genders. There is always the masculine present in the feminine form, and there is always the masculine present in the feminine form and the feminine form. The Hermetic teachings include much regarding the operation of the two principles of gender in the production and manifestation of various forms of energy, etc. But we do not deem it expedient to go into detail regarding the same at this point, because we are unable to back up the same with scientific proof, for the reason that science has not as yet progressed thus far. But the example we have given you of the phenomena of the electrons or corpuscles will show you that the science is on the right path, and will give you a general idea of the underlying principles. Some leading scientific investigators have announced their belief that in the formation of crystals there was to be found something that corresponded to sex activity, which is another straw showing the direction the scientific winds are blowing. And each year will bring other facts to corroborate the correctness of the Hermetic principle of gender. It will be found that gender is in constant operation and manifestation in the field of inorganic matter and in the field of energy or force. Electricity is now generally regarded as the something into which all other forms of energy seem to melt or dissolve. The electrical theory of the universe is the latest scientific doctrine and is growing rapidly in popularity and general acceptance. And it thus follows that if we are able to discover the phenomena of electricity, even at the very root and source of its manifestations, a clear and unmistakable evidence of the presence of gender and its activities, we are justified in asking you to believe that science at last has offered proofs of the existence and all universal phenomena of that great Hermetic principle, the principle of gender. It is not necessary to take up your time with the well-known phenomena of the attraction and repulsion of the atoms, chemical affinity, the loves and hates of the atomic particles, the attraction or cohesion between the molecules of matter. These facts are too well known to need extended comment from us. But have you ever considered that all of these things are manifestations of the gender principle? Can you not see that phenomena is on all fours with that of the corpuscles or electrons? And more than this, can you not see the reasonableness of the Hermetic teachings, which asserts that the very law of gravitation, that strange attraction by reason of which all particles and bodies of matter in the universe tend toward each other, is but another manifestation of the principle of gender, which operates in the direction of attracting the masculine to the feminine energies and vice versa? We cannot offer you scientific proof of this at this time, but examine the phenomena in the light of the Hermetic teachings on the subject, and see if you have not a better working hypothesis than any offered by physical scientists. Submit all physical phenomena to the test, and you will discern the principle of gender ever in evidence. Let us now pass on to a consideration of the operation of the principle on the mental plane. Many interesting features are there awaiting examination. So you see, essentially, oh, I didn't even have the book up there. So sorry. Ha. So you can see that it is saying that this manifests on all planes, and there is an attraction, there is a repulsion. As you can see, as I showed you in the source formula, there are two different types of sinusoidal waves. Just always remember the danger of thinking in terms of, we need to be so careful. We need to be very, very careful. Let's see, Brenda Chartrand, thank you for helping us wake up the world. Brenda says, thank you for all you do. You explain every topic perfectly and have really helped me, especially when I felt scared to die. I've never felt so much reassurance and understanding. I'm learning so much. I'm so glad that you enjoy my work, Brenda. That means the world to me. Thank you so much. Okay, so that whole topic was simply gender. We're going to move on to mental gender now, okay? And we're going to see what they have to say about mental gender. But before we jump into the next topic, let me jump into the comments, say hello to everyone, and yeah, see? Okay, so Panthera Leopard said, what is the gender of a neutron? Very, very true. And guess what? If we crack open a neutron, guess what? A neutron is composed of 3 quarks. So a neutron is composed of 3 quarks. So and these 3 quarks have a very different type of attractive force. It's not simply positive and negative. It's something called a color force, and it's not as simple as positive and negative. It has to do with a triad. So shall we say that reality is really composed of triads? Should we say that that's the case? Well, no, of course not. But you see where you can't be so simplistic. So that's a very, very good example to point out neutrons, and this is why we have to think in terms of metaphors. J.S. Clay says, a neutron is non-binary like me. Well, I am non-binary as well, my friend, so I suppose we are both neutrons in this atomic world of life. Patricia Lucas, thank you for helping us wake up the world. You are awesome. Says, really enjoying these readings. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your support, Patricia. Yeah, and Jordy says fermions and bosons. Fermions and bosons, right? You could think of what? So our bosons male and fermions female? You see, we're putting we're putting on Amanda Scoggins. I'm hoping I'm saying your last name right. Says you find the perfect words to explain what is really going on. I can hope I can talk to you one-on-one one day. Well, that means the world to me, and I'm glad that you're finding this explanation lucid, because I will admit this is a very difficult thing to articulate, because in one sense it's not wrong, but in another sense it is. If we're talking about objective mathematical truth, well, I've showed you what's there. It's the circle and the two waves. And yeah, sure, metaphorically we can call one male and one female. Sure, and then it all does manifest in existence in a certain way. And these can take on forms of what we experience as sexuality and things like this. It's just a lot more complicated. Quarks are a threesome, Sinclair says. Apparently so. Okay, so let's jump back into the reading here. But let's see. What are our likes at? 148 likes, not bad. But what do we want? We want 222 for some reason. I don't know. Arbitrarily so. It's very arbitrary, but I want it. So let's smash that like button, get to 222. Let's see, is anyone over? How many people we got on YouTube? Wow, we have 140 people on Facebook. Guys, if you're on Facebook, please go over to YouTube and subscribe. The link to join us in YouTube is in the description of this video. Okay? So please go over to the description. Go to the description of this video and subscribe on YouTube. I'll put the link in the comments too, but it's not going to appear if you're on mobile. It's only going to appear for those of you guys who are on desktop. So if you're on mobile, go to the caption and tap the link there. And yeah, say hi once you go over to YouTube, and I'll shout you out if I see it, because that's where I'm looking at comments. Okay. So we're going to continue our reading here, and I'll remember to actually put the book on screen. And once again, I just want to say I'm happy to hear that most of you are understanding this well, because like I said, thinking in terms of forces of gender, it can be helpful. But it's not objectively mathematically accurate. And again, in inner star actualization, you know, we have the shadow self, the mirror self, and the power self. The mirror self is about a couple different things. One aspect of the mirror self is about integrating your left and right hemispheric functions. If you're a logical person, you should make sure you integrate your intuition. If you're a creative person, you should make sure you integrate your logic and factual skills, etc. But another part of inner star actualization is integrating your inner gender opposite. But this is a very moving target. If you feel very masculine, whatever that means, you should work on integrating your feminine, whatever that may mean. But do you see how this is almost to break the idea of gender? Not to reinforce it, it's to break it. If you feel very masculine and like you can't express your emotion, you should integrate your feminine side and start to integrate your emotion. Not because it actually is feminine, but because you've sort of been conditioned to believe that it's feminine and that it's not right for you to behave masculine. Thank you for helping us wake up the world, Mike. So, hopefully that makes sense. Yes, I don't know how to say your name. I'm so sorry. Maisie says, break from the conditioned role of gender. Yeah, someone says, male seahorses give birth. G.S. Clay says, hard to have gender opposites when you're already pretty close to the middle. Well, that's fantastic. And so then you should work on integrating your left hemispheric and right hemispheric functions. So you're already naturally looking towards integrating your mirror self, which is interesting. Mike Hoover says using emotions is for the strong. Yeah, it's very important. You know, this like whole idea that men can't cry, men can't express their emotions. Guess what? That's really dangerous, because then it gets all pent up and bottled up. Then wars are going to start, right? We'd probably have less wars if men were allowed to cry, because they wouldn't have to put on these, dick comparing contests and all this crazy. Yeah, the world is a mess because of a lot of different reasons. And if understanding things in terms of masculine and feminine helps you understand that better, that's totally fine, right? If you go, that's totally fine. Just remember that it's a moving target and has to do with how we've been conditioned. Okay, Trent says war equals a pissing contest, right? This is why we need to move to the dialectic, where we just have a war of the mind, a war of ideas, and the only casualties are bad ideas, right? That's what we need to get to, because it's absolutely ridiculous that people are killing each other for the most ridiculous reasons. Okay, man, I'm getting distracted by the comments. I love hanging out with you guys in the comments. But let's continue our reading, or else Jordy is going to get mad at me, because Jordy always gets quite angry at me when I don't continue the reading. Okay, so let's do this. Wow, one last look at the comments. We're at 170. Let's get to 222. We're really close. Okay, anyway, mental gender. Let us see what this has to. And we're going to read this chapter and then the next one, which is the final chapter. And the final chapter doesn't have anything to do with gender, and it's very, very interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to give away what it's about. It's a little hard to explain what it's about, actually. But let's get through this chapter here, and then we'll get on to the final chapter, the last chapter of the Kybalion. Okay. Students of psychology who have followed the modern trend of thought along the lines of mental phenomena are stuck by the persistence of the dual mind idea, which has manifested itself so strongly during the past 10 or 15 years, and which has given rise to a number of plausible theories regarding the nature and constitution of these two minds. The late Thompson J. Hudson attained great popularity in 1893 by advancing his well-known theory of the objective and subjective minds, which he held existed in every individual. Other writers have attracted almost equal attention by theories regarding the conscious and subconscious mind, the voluntary and involuntary minds, the active and passive minds. The theories of the various writers differ from each other, but there remains the underlying principle of the duality of mind. Again, we looked at this. You can understand this in terms of right hemispheric and left hemispheric functions, or the conscious and the unconscious. Those of you who are familiar with Carl Jung will also see our idea of the inner star actualization and the mirror self being an updated version of his anima and animus. Anima, animus is very binary, male or female. Mirror self is along a spectrum, with male and female being sort of arbitrary ends of that spectrum as defined by our current society and current culture. Okie dokie. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up my video, Inner Star Actualization, How to Actualize Your Higher Self. It also talks about what our symbol means, one interpretation of the symbol. We have a variety. Anyway. The student of the Hermetic philosophy is tempted to smile when he reads and hears of these many new theories regarding the duality of mind, each school adhering tenaciously to its own pet theories and each claiming to have discovered the truth. The student turns back the pages of occult history, and away back in the dim beginnings of the occult teachings, he finds reference to the ancient Hermetic doctrine of the principle of gender on the mental plane, the manifestation of mental gender. And examining further, he finds that the ancient philosophy took cognizance of the phenomena of the dual mind, and accounted for it by the theory of mental gender. This idea of mental gender may be explained in a few words to students who are familiar with the modern theories just alluded to. The masculine principle of mind corresponds to the so-called objective mind, conscious mind, voluntary mind, active mind. And the feminine principle of mind corresponds to the so-called subjective mind, subconscious mind, involuntary mind, passive mind. Yeah, you see they're associating masculine with conscious and active, and feminine with unconscious and involuntary. Of course, the Hermetic teachings do not agree with the many modern theories regarding the nature of the two phases of mind, nor does it admit many of the facts claimed for the two respective aspects, some of these said theories and claims being very far-fetched and incapable of standing the test of demonstration. We point to the phases of agreement merely for the purpose of helping the student to assimilate his previously acquired knowledge with the teachings of the Hermetic philosophy. Students of Hudson will notice the statement at the beginning of his second chapter of The Law of Psychic Phenomena that the mystic jargon of the Hermetic philosophers discloses the same general idea, the duality of mind. If Dr. Hudson had taken the time and trouble to decipher a little of the mystic jargon of the Hermetic philosophy, he might have received much light upon the subject of the dual mind. But then, perhaps, his most interesting work might not have been written. Let us now consider the Hermetic teachings regarding mental gender. The Hermetic teachers impart their instruction regarding this subject by bidding their students examine the report of their consciousness regarding their self. The students are bidden to turn their attention inward upon the self dwelling within each. Each student is led to see that his consciousness gives him first a report of the existence of his self. The report is, I am. This at first seems to be the final words from the consciousness, but a little further examination discloses the fact that this I am may be separated or split into two distinct parts or aspects, which while working in unison and in conjunction yet, nevertheless, may be separated in consciousness. While at first there seems to be only an I existing, a more careful and closer examination reveals the fact that there exists an I and a me. These mental twins differ in their characteristics and nature, and an examination of their nature and the phenomena arising from the same will throw much light upon many of the problems of mental influence. Let us begin with a consideration of the me, which is usually mistaken for the I by the student, until he presses the inquiry a little further back into the recesses of consciousness. I'm going to comment on this in just a moment, but let me just get through it so I can comment on all of it in one fell swoop. A man thinks of his self, in its aspect of me, as being composed of certain feelings, tastes, likes, dislikes, habits, peculiar ties, characteristics, etc., all of which to go up to make his personality, or the self, known to himself and others. He knows that these emotions and feelings change, are born and die away, are subject to the principle of rhythm and the principle of polarity, which take him from one extreme of feeling to another. He also thinks of the me as being a certain knowledge gathered together in his mind, and thus forming a part of himself. This is the me of a man. But we have proceeded too hastily. The me of many men may be said to consist largely of their consciousness of the body and their physical appetites. Their consciousness being largely bound up with their bodily nature. They practically live there. Some men even go so far as to regard their personal apparel as a part of their me, and actually seem to consider it a part of themselves. A writer has humorously said that men consist of three parts: soul, body, and clothes. These clothes-conscious people would lose their personality if divested of their clothing by savages upon the occasion of a shipwreck. But even many who are not so closely bound up with the idea of personal raiment stick closely to the consciousness of their bodies being their me. They cannot conceive of a self independent of the body. Their mind seems to them to be practically a something belonging to their body, which in many cases it is indeed. So right now they're talking about individuals who associated themselves. They think of themselves as being their body and being their particular likes, dislikes, and personality. That's what these people associate with who they are, their avatar and their particular characteristics, such as likes and dislikes. But as a man rises in the scale of consciousness, he is able to disentangle his me from his idea of body, and is able to think of his body as belonging to the mental part of him. All right, so we know this is true. We are not actually our bodies are just avatars. We are eternal minds, we are monads. And as a monad, we link to a physical avatar. So what we truly are is a mind, a monad. When we link to a body, we become clothed by this physical avatar, but it's a link. Our mind isn't actually, our monad, us, isn't actually in this body. It's a link. It's a link to this body, like an avatar in a video game. When you play a video game, you don't actually go inside of the video game, right? When you put on a VR headset, you don't literally enter inside of the video game. If you were to literally enter inside of the video game when you put on a VR headset, then when your game character died, you would die because you would literally be inside of it. When you put on a VR headset, it seems like you're in the video game, but you're not actually. When your avatar dies, you remain fine. Same thing with the holos, the physical world. You as a mind, as an avatar, link to this body, and you're peering through the eyes of this body, just like you peer through a VR headset, and it seems like you're in this reality, but you're not actually. You're only viewing it from the perspective of the physical senses of your avatar. Just like you view reality, a game reality, through a VR headset. That's why it seems like you're in this reality when you aren't really. When you go to sleep and dream, you switch the channels, right? It'd be like in the VR headset, going from multiplayer to single player. Going from, like an MMORPG to just an RPG. Okay. But as man rises in the scale of consciousness, he is able to disentangle his me from his idea of body, and is able to think of his body as belonging to the mental part of him. But even then, he is very aptly to identify the me entirely with the mental states, feelings, etc., which he feels to exist within him. He is very apt to consider these internal states as identical with himself, instead of there being simply things produced by some part of his mentality, and existing within him, of him, and in him, but still not himself. So yes, that's very true. So once again, all right, so let's take this even a step further. You as a mind linked to a body, that body is your avatar, that's not who you are, okay? So we get that, we understand that. However, the particular conscious traits that you have, your likes, your dislikes, your loves, your hates, all these things, that isn't truly you as a mind. That is you as a mind filtered and manifested through your ego consciousness. It is a little subset. Remember, this entire circle represents us as a mind. The dot in the center represents our ego consciousness. So our ego consciousness is very, very important. It helps us navigate this world, but it's not who we actually are. If we want to do the video game metaphor, it would be kind of like saying that it's your video game character's attributes, right? When they level up and they learn a new skill or something, right? It's not actually you, but it's how you manifest in the game world mentally. So you, through ego consciousness, have particular likes, dislikes, ways of acting, behaving, but that is a filtered version. So it's not you in your entirety. It's a piece of you. It's a part of you. It's an expression of you. He sees that he may change these internal states of feelings by all effort of will, and that he may produce a feeling or state of an exactly opposite nature in the same way. And yet, the same me exists. And so, after a while, he is able to set aside these various mental states, emotions, feelings, habits, qualities, characteristics, and other personal mental belongings. He is able to set them aside in the not me collection of curiosities and encumbrances, as well as valuable possessions. This requires much mental concentration and power of mental analysis on the part of the student, but still the task is possible for the advanced student, and even those not so far advanced are able to see in the imagination how the process may be performed. After this laying aside process has been performed, the student will find himself in conscious possession of a self which may be considered in its I and me dual aspects. The me will be felt to be something mental, in which thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, and other mental states may be produced. It may be considered as the mental womb, as the ancients styled it, capable of generating mental offspring. It reports to the consciousness as a me, with latent powers of creation and generation of mental progeny of all sorts and kinds. Its powers of creative energy are felt to be enormous, but still it seems to be conscious that it must receive some form of energy from either its I companion or else from some other I it is capable to bring into being its mental creations. This consciousness brings with it a realization of an enormous capacity for mental work and creative ability. But the student soon finds that this is not all that he finds within his inner consciousness. He finds that there exists a mental something which is able to will that the me act along certain creative lines, and which is also able to stand aside and witness the mental creation. This part of himself he is taught to call his I. He is able to rest in its consciousness at will. He finds there are not a consciousness of an ability to generate and actively create, in the sense of the gradual process attendant upon mental operations, but rather a sense and consciousness of an ability to project an energy from the I to the me, a process of willing that the mental creation begin and proceed. He also finds that the I is able to stand aside and witness the operations of the me's mental creation and generation. There is this dual aspect in the mind of every person. The I represents the masculine principle of mental gender. The me represents the feminine principle. The I represents the aspect of being. The me, the aspect of becoming. You will notice that the principle of correspondence operates on this plane just as it does upon the great plane upon which the creations of universes is performed. The two are similar in kind, although vastly different in degree. As above, so below. These aspects of mind, the masculine and feminine principles, the I and the me, considered in connection with the well-known mental and psychic phenomena, give the master key to these dimly known regions of mental operation and manifestation. The principle of mental gender gives the truth underlying the whole field of the phenomena of mental influence, etc. The tendency of the feminine principle is always in the direction of receiving impressions, while the tendency of the masculine principle is always in the direction of giving out or expressing. The feminine principle has much more varied field of operation than has the masculine principle. So they're saying that the feminine is that which receives, and that the masculine is that which projects and gives. The feminine principle conducts the work of generating new thoughts, concepts, ideas, including the work of the imagination. The masculine principle contents itself with the work of the will in its various phases. And yet, without the active aid of the will of the masculine principle, the feminine principle is apt to rest content with generating mental images which are the result of impressions received from outside, instead of producing original mental creations. So basically saying that the feminine principle is that which generates ideas, the masculine principle is the will. And so you would want the two to work together. You'd want to get ideas, and then you would also want will to act on those ideas, right? But again, the idea of them being split into masculine and feminine is very arbitrary. It's not objectively true that the masculine is willful and the feminine is intuitive and in the realm of ideas. Persons who can give continued attention and thought to a subject actively employ both of the mental principles. The feminine in the work of mental generation, and the masculine will in stimulating and energizing the creative portion of the mind. The majority of persons really employ the masculine principle but little, and are content to live according to the thoughts and ideas instilled into the me from the eye of other minds. So again, it seems like that they're saying that the feminine is basically has to do with ideas. They're saying if the feminine is left on its own, then it will get its ideas from the outside world and form them. They're saying that the masculine principle, what the masculine principle will do, was stimulate the feminine principle to get the feminine principle essentially to make the ideas be self-generated, internally self-generated, rather than having the ideas coming out from the external world. Now, okay, I don't agree with any of this. I think it's just confusing and dumb to think of these terms in terms of, if it helps you, go for it. If it helps you, go for it. I think it's too complicated. It's too strange. It's too limiting. Yes, it is true that we have ideas will form either coming from the outside world and conditioning us, or internally generated. And we want to be internally generated. In my opinion, calling it masculine, feminine is confusing and not helpful. But if it helps you, then do it. Okay, but it's not our purpose to dwell upon this phase of the subject, which may be studied from any good textbook upon psychology, with the key that we have given you regarding mental gender. The student of psychic phenomena is aware of the wonderful phenomena classified under the head of telepathy, thought transference, mental influence, suggestion, hypnotism. Many have sought for an explanation of these varied phases of phenomena under the theories of the various dual mind teachers. And in a measure, they are right, for there is clearly a manifestation of two distinct phases of mental activity. But if such students will consider these dual minds in the light of the Hermetic teachings regarding vibration and mental gender, they will see that the long sought for key is at hand. In the phenomena of telepathy, it is seen how the vibratory energy of the masculine principle is projected toward the feminine principle of another person, and the latter takes the seed thought and allows it to develop in maturity. In the same way, suggestion and hypnotism operates. The masculine principle of the person giving the suggestions directs a stream of vibratory energy or willpower towards the feminine principle of the other person, and the latter accepting it makes it its own and acts and thinks accordingly. Okay, so in hypnotism, basically what happens is if you're trying to hypnotize someone, the individual that you're hypnotizing must go into a very suggestible and intuitive state. basically they're lowering their conscious field and opening up their unconscious. Okay? So the person that is going to be hypnotized lowers their conscious field and opens up their unconscious. And they enter into a very suggestible state. Then you, as the hypnotizer, consciously embed a command or information in their unconscious. So you are consciously embedding a command in their unconscious. They're saying that the masculine principle projects and enters the feminine principle. If that helps you understand it, fine. That's great. Remember, it's a metaphor, and understand that. So that's to me, this can lead to a lot of problems. But if it's helpful for you to understand it that way, great. But just know that this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the interplay of unconscious versus conscious forces, in terms of in the case of hypnotism, someone being in an unconscious suggestible state where their conscious field is lowered, and you as the hypnotizer are embedding a conscious command in their unconscious. An idea thus lodged in the mind of another person grows and develops, right? So you put that information in the unconscious of the other person, and then that idea, as time goes by, it grows and develops, and in time is regarded as the rightful mental offspring of the individual. So that individual will then think that idea, oh, it's my idea. Because, so they were in an unconscious suggestible state, the hypnotizer embeds something within their unconscious, then, they go about their day, their life, and this idea is in their unconscious, but then it bubbles up into consciousness, and then they think it's their idea. Oh, I just had this great idea. Unbeknownst to them, it's not really their idea, it was an embedded idea by the other individual. Jeannie, thank you for helping us wake up the world. Jeannie says, what does Jeannie say? Jeannie says, this is fascinating. I'm reading your books for a greater understanding of Hyperianism. The Kybalion is an interesting text. What are the high points that we are wanting to take from it? Excellent question. And you know what, Jeannie? What I'm going to do, that's a fantastic question. What I'm going to do is answer your question at the end of this video. So, because we're going to finish our reading of the Kybalion this today. So at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a quick summary of the Kybalion and a quick summary of the good things to take from it, the main points of where it gets things right, the main thing where it gets things wrong, how it fits in with Hyperianism, everything like that. So, awesome question. And I will get to it at the end of this video. What are our likes at? Quick, 193. We're almost at 222. My God, smash that like, guys. Let's get to 222. We're at 193. If you're on Facebook, get your asses over to YouTube. Link is in the caption of this video. That's where I'm interacting with people. Please subscribe, guys. Please subscribe. That helps so much. Okay. We're talking about hypnotism. We're talking about it. So let's get back to it. Okay, so we're talking about an idea that was embedded in someone's mind, and they go about their day, their life, it percolates, then it rises into consciousness, and that person thinks, hey, it's my idea. An idea thus lodged in the mind of another person grows and develops, and in time is regarded as the rightful mental offspring of the individual. Whereas in reality, like the cuckoo egg placed in the sparrow's nest, where it destroys the rightful offspring and makes itself at home. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe a cuckoo lays an egg in a sparrow's nest, and then the sparrow will think that it's actually its egg, but then it hatches and destroys the other eggs. I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me on that. I might be wrong, but that's what I think they're talking about. I think. The normal method is for the masculine and feminine principles in a person's mind to coordinate and act harmoniously in conjunction with each other. But unfortunately, the masculine principle in the average person is too lazy to act. Okay, so this is true. If we kind of disregard, if we remember we're being metaphorical, okay, the essence of what they're talking about is true. The masculine principle in the average person is too lazy to act. The display of willpower is too slight. And the consequence is that such persons are ruled almost entirely by the minds and wills of other persons, whom they allow to do their thinking and willing for them. How few our original thoughts or original actions are performed by the average person? Are not the majority of persons mere shadows and echoes of others having stronger wills or minds than themselves? The trouble is that the average person dwells almost altogether in his me consciousness and does not realize that he has such a thing as an I. He is polarized in his feminine principle of mind, and the masculine principle in which he has lodged the will is allowed to remain inactive and not employed. This is, okay, so I really don't like the whole feminine masculine thing here, because it's really making feminine seem weak and male seem strong. And I don't like it. It's getting borderline sexist for me, even though I know that that's not what they mean. I know. But do you see where people will take it to mean that? People will take, so I don't like it. Anyway, but if you look at the essential core message, it's true. They're basically saying that most people lack the consciousness that they need. And you remember how we were talking about hypnotism, how someone was embedded with the command of another. Essentially, they're saying most people are like this. And most people are not who they are. They're not themselves. They have been embedded by other people's ideas, other people's wills, and they're not who they are. This is what my book, The Metaphorical Suicide, is about. Destroying your old self so you can create the new self. So it's all about destroying the self that was constructed by outside influences, society, culture, family, friends, religion, so that you can construct your new self. That's what the metaphorical suicide is about. And it's very, very true. Most people are just shadows. This is what we call the ignavi. Okay? And they're using a masculine and feminine metaphor. And they're saying it basically that they're saying how it should be is that the masculine and feminine should be working together in an individual's mind, such as that the masculine impregnates the feminine with its own ideas and it gestates and manifests. But they're saying that most people have a weak masculine principle, so then the masculine principle of other people are impregnating your feminine principle, and so the ideas that gestate and get produced are not your ideas, not your offspring, but the offspring of others. So this metaphor is helpful, right? I mean, because that's an interesting, helpful way to understand it. Just always understand that it is a metaphor. Okay, just always understand that it is a metaphor. But that's essentially what they're saying. Now, Jeannie, I will answer your question real quick. But this whole section here, if you want to look up my videos on inner star actualization, it will talk about the Hyperian perspective of gender and things like this. Okay, and all the different structures of your mind. The way they're doing it is a little confusing. Anyway, okay. The strong men and women of the world invariably manifest the masculine principle of will, and their strength depends materially upon this fact. Instead of living upon the impressions made upon their minds by others, they dominate their own minds by their will, obtaining the kind of mental images desired, and moreover dominate the minds of others likewise in the same manner. Now, in Hyperianism, this is how we want to be as Hyperians. We want to make sure that we are having our own ideas and are not guided by the ideas and suggestions of others. However, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't integrate an idea if it's good. Of course we should. What it should mean is that we should just be conscious of it. For example, let's say we have two people. One of them is a highly intelligent philosopher, and the other, let's say, is a Nazi, right? And we have both of these people coming at us with their ideas. We need to have our conscious filter up so we can go, okay, well, this Nazi guy, he's crazy. I'm going to filter out and reject all his ideas. However, guess what? This philosopher, what he's saying, it makes sense. I'm going to think about it myself for a while. I'm thinking about it. I'm doing research. I'm thinking about it logically. Yes, good, excellent, makes sense. Therefore, I will integrate it. So you see, it doesn't mean that we should just reject all external ideas, period. It just means we need to have that filter up so that we can discern using logic and reason. This is why logic and reason is the pinnacle of Hyperianism. It's the guiding function, the star. This is why logic and reason is the utmost importance, so that we can filter ideas, right? So once again, doesn't mean we reject all the ideas. It means we filter them. See which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones we need to integrate, which ones we need to do away with. Look at the strong people, how they manage to implant their seed thoughts in the minds of the masses of the people, right? You can see, so, look at politicians, world leaders, things like this. Thus causing the latter to think thoughts in accordance with the desires and wills of the strong individuals. This is why the masses of people are such sheep-like creatures, never originating an idea of their own, nor using their own powers of mental activity. Once again, these sheep-like people who never think for themselves and don't have that filter up and just take whatever gets through. These are the Ignavi. The manifestation of mental gender may be noticed all around us in everyday life. The magnetic persons are those who are able to use the masculine principle in the way of impressing their ideas upon others. The actor, who makes people weep or cry as he wills, is employing this principle. And so is the successful orator, statesman, preacher, writer, or other people who are before the public attention. Right? That's why you go to these people, because they're able to influence you. A writer, an actor will influence your emotions, etc. The peculiar influence exerted by some people over others is due to the manifestation of mental gender along the vibrational lines above indicated. In this principle lies the secrets of personal magnetism, personal influences, fascination, etc., as well as the phenomena of generally grouped under the name of hypnotism. Amanda Scudgens, thank you for helping us wake up the world. I'll do a video on that sometime for sure. The student who has familiarized himself with the phenomena generally spoken of as psychic will have discovered the important part played in the said phenomena by that force which science has styled suggestion, by which term is meant the process or method whereby an idea is transferred to or impressed upon the mind of another, causing the second mind to act in accordance therewith. A correct understanding of suggestion is necessary in order to intelligently comprehend the very psychical phenomena which suggestion underlies. But still, more is a knowledge of vibration and mental gender necessary for the student of suggestion, for the whole principle of suggestion depends upon the principle of mental gender and vibration. It is customary for the writers and teachers of suggestion to explain that it is the objective or voluntary mind which make the mental impression or suggestion upon the subject or on the subjective or involuntary mind. But they do not describe the process or give us any analogy in nature whereby we may more readily comprehend the idea. But if you will think of the matter in the light of the Hermetic teachings, you will be able to see the energizing of the feminine principle by the vibratory energy of the masculine principle is in accordance to the universal laws of nature, and that the natural world affects countless analogies whereby the principle may be understood. In fact, the Hermetic teachings show that the very creation of the universe follows the same law, and that in all creative manifestations upon the planes of the spiritual, the mental, and the physical, there is always in operation this principle of gender, this manifestation of the masculine and the feminine principles, as above, so below, as below, so above. And more than this, when the principle of mental gender is once grasped and understood, the varied phenomena of psychology at once becomes capable of intelligent classification and study, instead of being very much in the dark. The principle works out in practice because it is based on the immutable universal laws of life. We're almost finished. This is the last paragraph here, and then I'm going to comment on this, and then we'll do some questions. We shall not enter into an extended discussion of or description of the varied phenomena of mental influence or psychic activity. There are many books, many of them quite good, which have been written and published on the subject of late years. The main facts stated in these various books are correct, although the several writers have attempted to explain the phenomena by various pet theories of their own. The student may acquaint himself with these matters, and by using the theory of mental gender, he will be able to bring order out of the chaos of conflicting theory and teachings, and may, moreover, readily make himself a master of the subject if he is to be inclined. The purpose of this work is to not give an extended account of psychic phenomena, but rather to give the student a master key whereby he may unlock the many doors leading into the parts of the temple of knowledge which he may wish to explore. We feel that in this consideration of the teachings of the Kybalion, one may find an explanation which will serve to clear away many perplexing difficulties. A key that will unlock many doors. What is the use of going into detail regarding all of the many features of psychic phenomena and mental science, provided we place in the hands of the student the means whereby he may acquaint himself fully regarding any phase of the subject which may interest him. With the aid of the Kybalion, one may go through any occult library anew, the old light from Egypt illuminating many dark pages in obscure subjects. That is the purpose of this book. We do not come expounding a new philosophy, but rather furnishing the outlines of a great world-old teaching, which will make clear the teaching of others, which will serve as a great reconciler of differing theories and opposing doctrines. Okay, then we're going to hit the next chapter here, which is the final chapter. However, I just want to summarize all this. So this is, I believe, the end of talking about gender and mental gender. So as you can see, probably some of these ideas of thinking in terms of male and female can be helpful, right? It can maybe get us a better understanding, because it's something we're sort of familiar with in our day-to-day world. But we always must understand that it is a metaphor. Where it goes wrong in the Kybalion is that it says that it's a universal law. And it's not. The universal law, I'm just pulling up again, the universal law is the source formula. This is the universal law from which all things can be understood. This is literally the equation of existence. Do you see gender here? That's an interpretation. That's an interpretation. What is true is mathematical frequency. If you want to call the sine wave feminine, and if you want to call the cosine wave masculine, sure, go ahead, but understand that that is your particular interpretation. It is not universally true. And that is where the Hermeticism goes wrong, because they say it is a universal law, it's universally true. No, it's not. Mathematical law is universally true. Mathematical law is universally true. And here you can see mathematical law. And sorry, just have a bunch of different windows open. So it can be, we just have to understand the difference. If we're trying to get ideas across metaphorically, sure, it can be helpful to talk in terms of male, female. If we're doing dream analysis, sure, it can be helpful to talk in terms of male, female. If we're talking about the universal nature and structure of reality, and if we want to be objective about it, then we have to be talk in terms of mathematics. We can't plug male and female into a mathematical equation. We can plug sine and cosine into a mathematical equation. So hopefully that makes sense. So guess what, guys? I have to take a piss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a piss. We're going to get to the final chapter of the Kybalion. Oh, someone who? Sinclair Angelo, thank you for helping us wake up the world. You have unlocked loyalty badges. So I'm going to go take a piss. I'm going to, and then we're going to get to the final chapter. But while I'm gone, in the void, I'm going to jump into the comments and see if there are any questions. So now is a great time to think of questions or ask questions, because when I come back, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes in the comments. Then we're going to get on to the final chapter. So let's do it. Now's a good time to do so. And enjoy the light show. And guess what, guys? If you're on Facebook, now's a great time to go subscribe on YouTube. While I'm away, go subscribe on YouTube right now. Click the button. The link is in the caption. Go subscribe. Go do it. If you support my work, that's how you can show it. And what are our likes at? We're at 204 likes. We want 222. So smash that like button. Help us get there as well. All right. BRB. You know what I should do? I just had this idea, is that when I take these bathroom breaks, I should play Hyperion music in as an intermission, because we have all these amazing Hyperion musicians. I should have some of their music playing while I do this. Okay, so we're gonna head over to the next chapter, but first I'm gonna spend some time in the comments. I saw an excellent question by someone. Someone said, I don't know where it was, but someone asked if I've always felt non-binary, and yes, I have. I didn't always know what non-binary was, and I always felt weird about it. Before I knew it was a thing. But yeah, I've always been so incredibly uncomfortable being classified as a male. It always would really disturb me, where it was like, okay, all the men go on this side of the room and all the females go on this side of the room, because we're gonna have like guy time and girl time. That creeped me out so much, and I didn't. I never. And I always felt more comfortable being on, like if I had to pick one, I would feel more comfortable being in on the female side of the room. Like if we're being really stereotypical about it, I wouldn't want to drink beer and watch sports. I would much rather drink a glass of wine and talk about clothes and makeup or something. You know, not that I'm that shallow or that women are that shallow. I'm just saying if we're talking about like real stereotypical classifications here, yeah, it always made me feel real. Again, I don't feel masculine or feminine. Sometimes I feel feminine, sometimes I feel masculine. Again, these are... Oh, Amanda Scoggins. Thank you. You have unlocked loyalty badges. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I'm sure probably some of you can relate. J.S. Clay says, I've never really liked the very stark gender divide. Yeah, and if you do feel really masculine or really feminine, that's fine. Like, you're just as valid. You're just as valid. And you can integrate your feminine aspects and be very masculine. See, right now, you must be wondering, like right now, I'm talking in terms of masculine and feminine because we're talking about them as defined by our current culture. So I'm using these words to communicate an idea with you as defined by our current culture, not as universal laws in existence, but by our current culture, which says men are dominating and drink beer and wear pants, and men are soft and feminine and wear makeup and are intuitive and creative. You see, these are arbitrary cultural definitions, but I'm using these words to get these ideas across to you. So I'm jumping in the comments here. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Maisie says, culture is a theater show. It's not who we are. I like that. I like that a lot. Very, very true. Oh, you're very welcome, Curtis. Curtis, thank you for helping us wake up the world, and you are very welcome, my friend. Well, Dennis, we would love to set up Hyperion temples of reason. And we sort of begun doing this by having Hyperion events in Los Angeles, California. However, with the recent pandemic, we can't set up physical things right now, physical events, physical locations. So once this pandemic clears up, once it's safe to do so, we will start establishing events and locations in the real world. Absolutely. Jason Willman says, being male nurse, I get gentrification all time based on gender. Wow, Darcy just donated $100. Thank you so much for helping us wake up the world. Wow. Well, we're getting a color. Geez, we just went back to red, but I don't know what. Damn. What does Darcy say? Just because this group and Morgue, this group/Morgue are amazing. Also, I'm all hyped up on the world of getting to officiate a polyamorous wedding this fall. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. That's wow, super cool. Well, thank you so much, Darcy, for your donation. You're amazing. Let's spam. What should we spam? What should we spam for Darcy? Let me look at what we got. Let's do the sign of Nuterra. Let's do the sign of Nuterra for Darcy. That's awesome that you're officiating a polyamorous wedding, and thank you so much for supporting this channel and our movement and what we are doing. It means the world to me. Elena Anderson, thank you as well for helping us wake up the world. Says, thank you for opening my mind and teaching me something new. Keep up the amazing work. You are very welcome. I'm so happy to help. And I'm so happy to be able to clear up this very confusing topic, as many people, especially when it comes to the mental idea. Everyone is valid. If you feel feminine, awesome. If you feel masculine, great. If you feel non-binary, if you feel some certain, if you're gender fluid, if you're masculine some days, feminine the other days, both one day, it's all valid, and it's all about expression. And I love what Was it Maisie? Maisie says that culture is a theater and not who we are. So you can put on whatever mask you want. And we're going to get to our final reading in just a minute here. The final chapter. I just want to spend a little bit more time, just a little bit more time in the comments taking some questions because I like hanging out with you guys. We're at 214 likes, guys. Smash those likes. And let's get to 222. By the way, guys, if you are on Facebook, now's the time to go over to YouTube. Since I'm in the comments, go over to YouTube and tell me you're from Facebook in the comments, and I'll shout you out. So go do it right now. If you're on Facebook, the link to this is in the caption of this video. So if you're on Facebook, go to the caption of this video. There's the link. Click it and say so in the comments of YouTube. So I'll give you a shout out. And let me jump in the comments again. Hannah Rose says you should do more live shows. Well, Hannah, I go live twice a week, which is kind of, I do 2 regular videos and 2 live streams a week. So I'm a little bit at max capacity. I'd love someday to be able to go live even more. But right now I go live every Thursday and every Monday. Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. I don't know how to pronounce your name. NTR Raw Aaron from Facebook. Thanks for coming. Make sure you subscribe, guys. Thanks for coming to Facebook. And so is Red Fang. Thank you. All you guys from Facebook, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. New subscriber, Wayne. Thank you. Wayne says, I'm really digging this direction of interpretation. Using pure mathematics to interpret and understand metaphysical terms allows for a very logically sound discussion. You hit the nail on the head. So I don't know how new you are to this channel, but we are founded on a system called ontological mathematics. And it's about understanding the realm of the mind, what you might call metaphysics. It is the realm of the mind mathematically, just like physics understands the physical realm. So we are a rationalist system that understands the realm of the mind even more rigorously than physics understands the physical world. So that's a great point, and that's the whole point of what we do, is about being able to have certain mathematical knowledge about the mental substructure of existence. Anthony from Facebook. Thank you so much for migrating over here. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. Did we make it to 222? Make sure you subscribe. Did we make it to 222? Let's see. Hell yeah! 222 likes. Fantastic. We did it. We did it. I got to thank you guys. We reached our goal. Hell yeah. Hell yes. And remember, if you're from Facebook, I'll give you a shout out if you say so in the comments. And also make sure you hit that subscribe button. Shouldn't have taken this long, Jordy said. Hey, well, I'm sorry, Jordy. I'm sorry. Buck Lau says, just found you, love your videos, telling everyone about you. Thank you so much, Buck. Also, guys, remember, that's an awesome way. All the donations help so much. If you can't donate, the best way you can help is by telling people about this channel, liking the videos, subscribing, sharing. Our goal is to hit 100,000 subscribers. We're really close. We're like 93.9 thousand. So thank you. Yeah, that's the best way to support. Tori says, do you have to identify as Hyperion to be considered one? A lot of it resonates with me, and I support the cause, but I'm basically a loner when it comes to, like, circles and stuff. Well, I'm not really sure exactly what you mean. You don't have to, like, go... how do I put this? If you agree with all of our ideals and things like this, it's not necessary for you to come to our meetups when we have them, if that's not your thing. we would love to have you, and we would love for you to do that, and you're more than welcome to. But if you don't, if that's not your thing, you don't have to. If that's what you mean, yeah, that's perfectly fine and perfectly valid. Cutie little bug, thank you for subscribing. Decab says greetings from Holland, tuned in from Facebook. Thanks, Decab. Javier, is it Javier? Is that how I pronounce your name? I'm not sure. But anyway, what do I think of Aleister Crowley? Aleister Crowley is an interesting individual, and he's a lot more intelligent than most people think. He did get a lot of things wrong. He was a bit misogynistic. I should do a video on Aleister Crowley to say exactly what I think about him. He was a very smart person. And he's a lot smarter than most people think because he spoke in metaphors and people thought he was being literal. He does get a lot wrong, and he does say some dangerous things. So it's kind of like anyone else in this world. There are things that you can take from it and things that you should leave aside, just like when we read the Kybalion. Maybe we'll read one of Crowley's work one of these days. I'm not sure what the copyright is on his work. I'm not sure if I can read them. We'll see. But that would be an interesting one to dissect. Maisie says, I think if you added psychology to your talks and knowledge, you'd be twice the force. Well, I have. You should check out the video Inner Star Actualization, which involves Jungian psychoanalysis. So we are all about psychology. In fact, that's what our symbol is about. It's about actualizing the higher self, the shadow self, the mirror self, and the power self. These are literally unconscious archetypal structures interacting with consciousness. It's psychology. It's Jungian psychology. Psychoanalysis. It deals with the bicameral mind by Julian Jaynes. So check out my video on Inner Star Actualization. Honestly, we've got it all. We've got psychology, we've got physics, we've got metaphysics, we've got literally we are the new paradigm of the future. So there's nothing that we don't have. Again, this is not to sound egotistical or something, but it's just true. We've got it all. We've got it all. Kaede says, I just started studying Carl Jung. That's awesome. So you'll definitely notice similarities in Carl Jung when he talks about the anima and the animus. Just remember that our mirror self is different because anima and animus is male and female, very binary, and the mirror self is a spectrum with, male and female and everything in between, like a sliding scale. And once again, guys, if you are on Facebook, get over to YouTube. Oh wow, we're at 235 likes. Awesome. Get over to YouTube so I can give you a shout out. And make sure you subscribe, guys. Let me know if you subscribe as well. So I'll definitely give you a shout out if you subscribe. God damn it. Sorry, I got all these windows open. Okay. So, well, Kalina says, my shadow self seems like a separate personality. It kind of is. These are, Carl Jung said this, these are archetypal structures that have a life of their own, with their own wills and desires and wants and needs. And watch my video on Inner Star Actualization, because it's again, if the circle is your higher self, these archetypal structures are sort of like little selves that exist within your higher self. So the goal is to integrate them all and to get them to sort of mesh and work together well and play nice, so to speak. I've gone through quite a lot of Crowley's material, Wayne. quite a lot. My favorite work by Crowley was his first work called Bereshith, a lesson in ontology, or an essay on ontology, and it was his very first work, if I remember correctly. And the reason why it's my favorite is because it is more mathematical and logical. And what I think Crowley did was realize that people didn't know what he was talking about, so he started talking more in terms of metaphor. J.S. Clay says, yes, Pythagorean Illuminism is probably going to be what our next book reading will be about. Anthony, thanks for being a subscriber. Anastasia, definitely watch the Interstar Actualization videos. Yes, you will like those. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue with the book reading, or else Jordy will yell at me. And Aaron Banfield says, I'm new and love your work. Thank you all. And Jordy is laughing, yes. And make sure you subscribe, guys. Whoa, I just slid all over the screen there, didn't I? Make sure you subscribe. Let me just take one last look at what... Wow, our likes are at 240. That's awesome. That is awesome. So let's continue our reading. This is the final chapter. We are on the final chapter of the Kybalion. And then next week we'll be starting a new book. God damn it, I'm almost out of water. I forgot to fill it up. I might have to take a break to fill up water. We'll see. Anyway. Wow, we're at 241 likes. Can we make 250? I don't know. I don't know. Smash that like button if you haven't. Okay, we're about to continue here. Okay. Final chapter, Hermetic Axioms. The possession of knowledge, unless accompanied by a manifestation and expression in action, is like the hoarding of precious metals, a vain and foolish thing. Knowledge, like wealth, is intended for use. The law of use is universal, and he who violates it suffers by reason of his conflict with natural forces. And this is very, very true. And this is really important and something I've been meaning to do a video about for a very long time. The possession of knowledge must also be accompanied by action. This is what philosopher Hegel called, oh God, I'm having a brain fade here. Theoretical cognition and practical cognition. So theoretical cognition and practical cognition. Theoretical cognition is, I'm going to put it real simply, essentially acquiring knowledge, and practical cognition is making use of it. Said in more complicated terms, theoretical cognition is conforming your subjectivity to objectivity, meaning making sure your subjective interpretation of objective reality match. Make sure you know what reality is. And then practical cognition, conforming objectivity to subjectivity, meaning then transforming the objective will according to your will, according to your mind. And this is also my contention with sort of the difference between magic and philosophy. For those of you who don't really know what magic is, it's really misunderstood, and I hesitate to even talk about it because people are going to think that it's crazy. But stripped down, in essence, what is magic? It's conforming the objective world according to your will. That's all it is. It's not making things fly. It's not making things change color. It's not making things disappear. It's not casting a love spell. It's conforming objectivity to subjectivity. It's having an idea in your mind and making it happen. If you want something in the world to change, you have to go out there and make it happen. Philosophy tends to be more about acquiring knowledge and acquiring ideas. So there's this idea of marrying the two, where you are acquiring ideas and acquiring knowledge and using that to update your mental schemas, your mental paradigms, the operating systems that you run on, but then to go out and change the world according to your will. Right? So magic is very lacking in that its objective philosophy is not very good, but it attempts to change the world according to its will. But guess what? So many people who are involved in magic today don't even know that that's what it is, and they think it's about like horoscopes and knowing, you know, if you're going to meet the love of your life or making more money. Yeah, I got to do a whole video about this because it's just it's too nuanced. But anyways, the main point here is that if you acquire knowledge, you should also use that knowledge to change the world. And that's 100% true. The Hermetic teachings, while always having been kept securely locked up in the minds of the fortunate possessors thereof, for reasons which we have already stated, were never intended to be merely stored away and secreted. The law of use is dwelt upon in the teachings, as you may see by reference to the above quotation from the Kybalion, which states it forcibly: knowledge without use and expression is a vain thing, bringing no good to its possessor or to the race. Beware of mental miserliness, and express into action that which you have learned. Study the axioms and aphorisms, but practice them also. And this is what we're about: Hyperianism, right? We're about creating a new humanity and a new earth. We're about collective change and individual change. So it's about shaping you in your life, but also shaping the world. You see, it's about both. Transform yourself, transform the world, transform the universe. As we transform ourselves, we must go out and transform others. As we transform others, the world transforms. And ultimately, as worlds transform, the universe transforms. As above, so below. So it is imperative, as Hyperians, that we make a change in this world. So what's so important is spreading this information, getting this information out there, making it available to others, right? This is why we have to spread this, because our mission is to alter the consciousness of the world. We are forward thinkers. We are ahead of our time. But what better people than people ahead of their time than to change the time that we live in? We are forward thinkers because we will drag the backwards thinkers up forward to meet us. We are the forward thinkers that will raise the world. We will push the world forward. We will bring the world up to meet us. So we must use this knowledge to transform the world. That is what we are. That is our purpose. Our purpose as monadic minds is to transform ourselves as self-transforming, self-evolving units of frequency, of energy, of mathematical energy patterns, and to transform the world, other minds, and the environment around us. It is literally our purpose. It's embedded within our coding. And we will feel depressed if we don't do this. We will feel unfulfilled if we aren't transforming ourselves in the world. That's why there's so much unfulfillment. Because life isn't about making money and eating junk food and watching TV. Life is about personal and collective fulfillment and transformation. We give below some of the more important Hermetic axioms from the Kybalion, with a few comments added to each. Make these your own and practice and use them, for they are not really your own until you have used them. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. The Kybalion. One may change his mental vibrations by an effort of will, in the direction of deliberately fixing the attention upon a more desirable state. Will directs the attention, and attention changes the vibration. Cultivate the art of attention by means of the will, and you have solved the secret of the mastery of moods and mental states. To destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate upon the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity. The Kybalion. This is one of the most important of the Hermetic formulas. It is based upon true scientific principles. We have shown you that a mental state and its opposite were merely the two poles of one thing. For example, fear and courage, or love and hate being two ends on a pole, two ends of a spectrum. And that by mental transmutation, the polarity might be reversed. This principle is known to modern psychologists, who apply it to the breaking up of undesirable habits by bidding their students to concentrate upon the opposite quality. If you are possessed of fear, don't waste time trying to kill out fear, but instead cultivate the quality of courage, and the fear will disappear. So if you're fearful, don't try and eliminate fear, rather try and cultivate courage. Some writers have expressed this idea most forcibly by using the illustration of the dark room. You do not have to shovel out or sweep out the darkness, but by merely opening up the shutters and letting in the light, the darkness has disappeared. To kill out a negative quality, concentrate upon the positive pole of that same quality, and the vibrations will gradually change from negative to positive until finally you will become polarized on the positive pole instead of the negative. The reverse is also true. Now, I'm going to talk on this for just a moment because this is really important. And it is true, but I also don't want people to use it as an excuse for loneliness. So let me tell you, yes, if you are fearful or lacking in confidence, you're saying don't try and kill out the fear, try and cultivate courage. So this can be very, very powerful. If you, there are like many exercises that you can do. Say you want to feel more confident. Well, you can stand up straight, put your shoulders back, imagine yourself being a very, huge and large and like taking up the room, and you'll feel more confident, right? You'll feel more confident if you do these things, And really, this is everything a Hyperion should cultivate as well. You should cultivate even things that might seem little like this, but it's true. You should carry yourself like this. Keep your back straight, your shoulders back, because you are Hyperion. You are the next evolutionary step. And you should embody that in your life and be proud of it and wear that in confidence and courage. So always stand with your shoulders back and your back straight, head held high, because we truly are the next steps of evolution, and we should cultivate that in our life. But I want to say something that's important here. And so for those who know me, know that I once had a fear of public speaking. And of course I got over that fear. I became a performer, was on TV, all sorts of stuff that, I'm super comfortable in front of crowds now. Super comfortable. But I used to have a devastating fear of public speaking. Well, guess what? I tried so many psychological techniques. I tried a lot. Going back into your childhood and eliminating cause of associating negativity with failure, things like, confidence increasing. I worked on it hard. But let me tell you, that was not enough. If you do that, it will help. But does that mean if you do that every day for a month that you're going to be able to go up in front of a crowd and just be totally at ease? No. So there's another thing that you have to do. Yes, that helps so much and you should do it. However, the thing that really helps is applying your will and putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation consistently. So what really got over my fear of public speaking was going in front of crowds, using my willpower to making it so that my will was stronger than my fear. Cultivating your will so that your will is stronger than your fear. If your fear is stronger than your will, you won't get in front of that crowd. If your will is stronger than the fear, you will get in front of that crowd. So doing it consistently, I did open mic nights, I started doing street performances, I took a public speaking class, all sorts of things that just got me in front of crowds again and again and again and again and again and again. And that is what will cultivate change. So yes, these mental techniques do help. They're great exercises. But don't use it as an excuse to not go out there and throw yourself into the fire, so to speak. If you're afraid of the darkness, throw yourself into the darkness so that you realize there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. That's what you realize. Oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. You do it 50 times, you realize, oh, it's no big deal. It's just like anything else. So yes, make sure you cultivate will. But anyway, I just want to point out that yes, these things that they're saying are true. But don't use it as an excuse to not do the hard thing. Because so many people will. They'll be like, oh man, it's really hard. I don't want to actually go up and do the public speaking. So I'm just going to sit at home and cultivate courage tonight. And then I'll do the public speaking thing in a week after I've spent a week of cultivating courage. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And then they never actually go out. So don't use this as an excuse. Use it as a tool, but actually do the thing. Because doing the thing, that's what will make all the difference in the world. Okay. The reverse is also true, as many have found out to their sorrow when they have allowed themselves to vibrate too constantly on the negative pole of things. But it is true, right? You don't want to be trying to kill the fear. You want to be cultivating courage and confidence. Very, very true. So you see, both help, but you got to make sure you're doing both. Not in terms of killing the fear, but both as in going out and getting in front of the crowd. In our example, okay, you want to be proactive. So don't concentrate too much on the negative poles of things. By changing your polarity, you may master your moods, change your mental states, remake your disposition, and build up character. Much of the mental mastery of the advanced Hermetics is due to the application of polarity, which is one of the most important aspects of mental transmutation. Remember the Hermetic axiom quoted previously, which says, mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration, the Kybalion. The mastery of polarization is the mastery of the fundamental principles of mental transmutation or mental alchemy. For unless one acquires the art of changing his own polarity, he will be unable to affect his environment. An understanding of this principle will enable one to change his own polarity as well as that of others, if he will, but devote the time, care, study, and practice necessary to master the art. The principle is true, but the results obtained depend upon the persistent patience and practice of the student. Rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization, the Kybalion. As we have explained in previous chapters, the Hermetists hold that the principle of rhythm manifests on the mental plane as well as on the physical plane, and that the bewildering succession of moods, feelings, emotions, and other mental states are due to the backward and forward swing of the mental pendulum, which carries us from one extreme of feeling to the other. The Hermetists also teach that the law of neutralization enables one to a great extent to overcome the operation of rhythm and consciousness. As we have explained, there is a higher plane of consciousness as well as the ordinary lower plane. And the master, by rising mentally to the higher plane, causes the swing of the mental pendulum to manifest on the lower plane. And he, dwelling on his higher plane, escapes the consciousness of the swing backward. This is effected by polarizing on the higher self, and thus raising the mental vibrations of the ego above those of the ordinary plane of consciousness. It is akin to rising above a thing and allowing it to pass beneath you. The advanced Hermetist polarizes himself at the positive pole of his being, the I am pole, rather than the pole of personality, and by refusing and denying the operation of rhythm, raises himself above its plane of consciousness and standing firm in his statement of being, he allows the pendulum to swing back on the lower plane without changing his polarity. This is accomplished by all individuals who have obtained any degree of self-mastery, whether they understand the law or not. Such persons simply refuse to allow themselves to be swung back by the pendulum of mood and emotion, and be steadfastly affirming the superiority. They remain polarized on the positive pole. The master, of course, attains a far greater degree of proficiency because he understands the law which he is overcoming by a higher law, and by the use of his will he attains a degree of poise and mental steadfastness almost impossible of belief on the part of those who allow themselves to be swung backwards and forwards by the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. So if we once again imagine, remember, our higher self is the complete circle. It's us as a monad. And our ego consciousness is this little center dot and circle. So our little center dot and circle can be swayed by moods and emotions, but if we have the perspective of our higher self as a monadic mind, we can sort of detach and watch that and sort of choose to be affected or not. If we use instincts as an extreme case, right? We can either choose to be led by our instincts, or we can use our higher mind to realize, no, I don't have to be led by my instincts. I can decide not to. Like if I'm really hungry right now, my instincts may be to go eat, a whole chocolate cake. But if I'm on a diet or something, I can use my higher mind to say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's what this is sort of talking about, but on a higher level. It's not having the perspective of our ego consciousness, but having the perspective as us as an eternal mind, a monad, and looking at ourselves, sort of detached in our avatars and our particular ego consciousness, and seeing our ego consciousness being, sort of swayed by emotions and feelings and moods, and then being able to say, you know what, no, I'm going to understand what that really is, and not let that affect me. This is sort of what they mean by standing above the pendulum and letting it pass underneath you. Remember always, however, that you do not really destroy the principle of rhythm, for that is indestructible. You've simply overcome one law by counterbalancing it with another, and thus maintain an equilibrium. Sort of like the instincts, right? You may instinctually desire to go eat a chocolate cake, and you haven't destroyed that, but you've risen above it. You've used a higher law to overcome a lower law. You've used your logic and reason to say, no, I'm not going to succumb to hunger at the moment. Very physical manifestation. The laws of balance and counterbalance are in operation on the mental as well as on the physical planes. And an understanding of these laws enable one to overthrow laws, whereas he is merely exerting a counterbalance. Nothing escapes the principle of cause and effect, but there are many planes of causation, and one may use the laws of the higher to overcome the laws of the lower. So I hope you understand. I just sort of explained this, so I hope that makes sense. Kalina Wilkinson, thank you for helping us wake up the world. You have unlocked loyalty badges. I love that sound, by the way. It's so cool. Okay. By an understanding of the practice of polarization, the Hermetist rises to a higher plane of causation, and thus counterbalance the laws of the lower planes of causation, right? So we're rising to a higher plane. We're using our logic and reason, the highest plane. Logic and reason is the highest plane, to counterbalance a lower plane. Hunger, right? Very, very base, very physical, very instinctual, very low. Right? Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. It has a purpose. But our logic and reason can deem, all right, hunger was an evolutionary mechanism developed to enable us to eat food and survive, but now we live in a time where chocolate cake is in abundance, and when evolution was developing, there wasn't a lot of chocolate cake, so now this function is sort of outdated. because it hasn't kept up with the times, and I can use my logic and reason to realize that it wouldn't be a good idea to sit here and eat, 20 chocolate cakes right now. By rising above the plane of ordinary causes, they become themselves in a degree. And by the way, I hope you understand that I'm using really, really, really basic examples just to get across the idea. These obviously have much more useful applications than just not eating 20 chocolate cakes, which I would hope most people wouldn't do. But this has the idea, but using this is also has really important consequences, such as using our logic and reason to rise above culture and say, hey, guess what? It's okay for people to be homosexuals. It's okay for people to be polyamorous, even if I don't want to be, or they don't want to be. I'm not saying me particularly. I'm using me as an example. It's okay to, so many examples, not just those examples. But you get the idea that this is very, very important in not only self-transformation, but world transformation, as we use our logic and reason to give everyone as much freedom as possible, and to have that higher perspective. That perspective outside space and time. Because our mind does not reside in the holos. Our mind resides in the source, the frequency domain. Okay. All right. Just wanted to point out that this is much more important than just chocolate cake. Aaron, thank you for helping us wake up the world. You have unlocked loyalty badges. By being able to master their own moods and feelings, and by being able to neutralize rhythm, as we have already explained, they are able to escape a great part of the operations of cause and effect on the ordinary plane. The masses of people are carried along obedient to their environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves. The masses of people are carried along obedient to their environment. See, they don't have that higher perspective. They don't have, they're not very conscious. They don't have the perspective of their higher self. So they're obedient to their environment. Their culture, their outside environment conditions them. The wills and desires of others stronger than themselves. The effects of inherited tendencies. You can see people like, Trump supporters who will just believe whatever Trump says. It's the masses that are just swayed. Again, there's nothing wrong with taking good ideas if they're good ideas. But if you're taking an idea, no matter how insane it is, because you aren't weighing it, then that's when the problem arises. Anyway, these are what we call the ignavi. The effects of inherited tendencies, the suggestions of those about them, and other outward causes, which tends to move them about on the chessboard of life like mere pawns. Again, yes, they're moved around on the chessboard of life like pawns. And remember, as Hyperians, we don't want to be moved around like pawns. We want to be the players of the game. We want to play the game. The people who are the pawns are being played, and they don't even realize that the game is being played. We realize that a game is being played, so we want to figure out the rules of the game, understand ourselves and how existence works. Those are the rules of the game. And then start to play the game. Remember, not to just know, but to actually do. Not just acquire knowledge, but actually do. That would be like knowing the rules of the game, but not playing the game. That would be like not knowing the rules of the game and still just being allowed to be moved around like a pawn or something. So we want to know the rules of the game. We want to know how reality works. We want to know how we work. And then we want to play the game. We want to level up ourselves. We want to become the best versions of ourselves we can possibly be. And we want to change the world. We want to create a new humanity and a new earth. By rising above these influencing causes, the advanced Hermetists seek a higher plane of mental action, And by dominating their moods, emotions, impulses, and feelings, they create for themselves new characters, qualities, and powers, by which they overcome their ordinary environment and thus become practically players instead of mere pawns. See? Such people help to play the game of life understandingly instead of being moved about this way and that way by stronger influences and powers and wills. They use the principle of cause and effect instead of being used by it. Of course, even the highest are subject to the principle as it manifests on the higher planes, but on the lower planes of activity, they are masters instead of slaves. So you see, one thing I want to note about the Kybalion too is that the Kybalion doesn't emphasize very much, if at all, the need to change the world. It's more about like mastering your moods and learning about reality, so changing yourself. But they're pretty much silent about changing the world, and that's not great, right? So we need to understand that that's also a big difference here, and we need to understand that in Hyperianism, it's about both. Playing the game isn't just changing yourself, it's also changing the world. So not only do we need to evolve and change ourselves, but we need to help create a collective, a new world. And that can be as simple as sharing a YouTube video, sharing videos, sharing information consistently. Taken even further, it can be about, creating a real world Hyperion collective where we have meetups and start implementing our ideas and, doing activist type things. So anyway, the point is that the Kybalion is very much about the self. Which, that is important, super important. But also we need to be focused on changing the world as well. That's a very big part of how you play the game. Such people help to play the game of life understandingly instead of being moved about. Okay, I read this. As the Kybalion says, the wise ones serve on the higher but rule on the lower. They obey the laws coming from above them, but on their own plane and those below them, they rule and give orders. And yet in so doing, they form a part of the principle instead of opposing it. The wise man falls in with the law, and by understanding its movements, he operates it instead of being its blind slave, just as does the skilled swimmer, turn this way and that, going and coming as he will, instead of being as the log, which is carried here and there. Yeah, so you don't want to be the log on the water that's just carried by the current. You want to be the swimmer that can decide where to swim. There is, so the wise man as compared to the ordinary man, and the Hyperion compared to the Ignavi. And yet both swimmer and log, wise man and fool, are subject to law. He who understands this is on the road to mastery. So we're all governed by the mathematical laws of reality. We can't break the mathematical laws of reality, because really that's literally what we are. We are units of mathematical frequency patterns. So it's not like we're limited. It's what we are. So it's not like, damn it, I'm, confined by this higher law that rules me. You are the higher law, and you rule yourself. So you see the difference there? The law, the mathematical law, isn't this like taskmaster. It's you. And once you understand that, you become master of yourself. In conclusion, let us again call your attention to the Hermetic axiom. True Hermetic transmutation is a mental art. In the above axiom, the Hermetists teach that the great work of influencing one's environment is accompanied by mental power, the universe being wholly mental. It follows that it may be ruled only by mentality. And in this truth, it is to be found an explanation of all the phenomena and manifestations of the various mental powers which are attracting so much attention and study in these earlier years of the 20th century. Back of and under the teachings of the various cults and schools remains ever constant the principle of the mental substance of the universe. If the universe be mental in its substantial nature, then it follows that mental transmutation must change the conditions and phenomena of the universe. If the universe is mental, then mind must be the highest power affecting its phenomena. If this be understood, then all the so-called miracles and wonder workings are seen plainly for what they are. The all is mind, the universe is mental. Finis. And that, my friends, is the end of the Kybalion. So I hope you have seen, if you haven't seen the rest of the videos, make sure you go back and watch them. I'm going to jump to the comments here in a second, but I just want to give sort of a recap and say that I hope you can see how understanding the Kybalion is helpful. And there are a lot of things that are, interesting. They use a lot of metaphor. And maybe, hopefully, some of this metaphor has helped you understand some of these concepts in a new light. Some of the things that the Kybalion gets wrong is that, once again, we can understand all 7 of the Hermetic axioms, in terms of the source formula. So once again, every single one of them, polarity, rhythm, vibration, mentality, can be understood in terms of this single formula. And that's what you'll find. Not only that, this can explain all of physics. This can explain everything of quantum mechanics. It can explain the frequency nature of reality. It literally explains everything. And by understanding this one equation, we can understand all existence. So, the Kybalion explores these ideas in an interestingly metaphorical way and with some different terminology. And I also want to remind you all that another very, very important difference is that the Kybalion says that the all is unknowable. We know that we can know the all because the all is mathematical, and we are mathematical beings, and mathematics can know itself. So to say that the all is unknowable would be to say that we can't know ourselves, and we can, as the aphorisms go, know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods, because we are the universe and the gods, so to speak. So we can know ourselves. We can know the all. In terms of Hyperianism, the all is called the absolute. We are that, and we can know it. Another thing that the Kybalion doesn't elucidate, it kind of hints at it, but does not say it very well, is that the absolute is, so here is how it actually is. As I've shown before, this is the absolute, or the all, and it is actually a collection of individual minds or individual monads. So each one of these is what we truly are, an individual mind or an individual monad, and taken together we form the absolute, the one mind. The Kybalion doesn't make this clear. It makes it seem as if the all is literally just one. So basically the Kybalion makes it look like all these circles would be dissolved, so it would just be one thing. That is not accurate. The all, the absolute, is dependent on us for its existence. We are what it is. If we did not exist, it would not exist. If these little circles didn't exist, the big circle would not exist. The little circles depend, the big circle depends on the little circles for its existence. So once again, the big differences is that the absolute is knowable. We are the absolute as individual monads, and all of reality can be understood through the source formula. There are many other little differences, but those are the major ones that I would like to highlight. And once again, with this information, as was highlighted in this chapter, we must take this information and become players of the game. So as we have read this, make sure that we continue to understand this information and integrate it and use it to change our lives and change the world. Okay, so we must transform ourselves, transform the world, and transform the universe. That is our purpose. We are the next evolutionary step. So it's time to behave like that. It's time to act like it. It's time to become it. Stand up with your back straight, your back straight, your shoulders back, your head held high. Because we are the future of humanity. Now, we're going to continue our reading. Next week, we're going to start a reading by one of the books illuminating the secret religion of the Pythagorean Illuminati. Which one? I'm not sure yet, but it will be one of the books discussing the secret religion of the Pythagorean Illuminati. And these are extremely powerful books, so you definitely want to see it. You have to be very on point because the information within these books is very, very powerful. So that is what we are going to be starting next Monday, and I am extremely excited for that. So make sure that you are there, and I'm going to jump into the comments and say hello. Hello, everyone. Oh, we did reach 250 likes. Amazing. Make sure you do smash that like button, guys. Smash that like button. And if you are on Facebook, now is the time. If you are on Facebook, now is the time to go over to YouTube, subscribe. Let me know that you are from Facebook in the comments, because I'm interacting in the comments right now. So you guys on Facebook, go over to YouTube right now. Tell me you are. And Ralph said, I can't wait for next week. It's going to rock. It is going to rock indeed. Thanks for smashing like. Testament of Orpheus. J.S. Clay says, looking forward to it. Maisie says, I can't believe my ADD let me focus this long. I've been commenting the whole time. I'm happy to hear that. I'm so glad that my readings have captivated you to overcome your ADD. That's quite a compliment indeed. Elena says, these book readings have taught me more than it did in school. I'm really happy to hear that. Zelatov says, I'm on YouTube now. I don't like Facebook anymore. Thank you for coming over here, Zelatov. See, let that be a lesson to you, you Facebook people. Get over here. Thank you. Please subscribe. If you're from Facebook, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Let me know if you subscribe. Tell me. So, that's the whole point. Angela says, so excited for next Monday's book. So excited to changing the world together. Absolutely. These streams are great. I'm so glad you're enjoying them. Nicole says, from Nebraska, you are awesome. And I want to give a shout out to all the Super Chat donators today. A big shout out to everyone that donated. But let me give a shout out to some of the Darcy Hutchcroft, and let's see, Scolywag, Angela, Jackie, Jeannie. I can't shout out all you guys, but just for most of you, I want some of you. Big shout out to all you guys. Can't tell you how much that helps. That's how I'm able to continue doing what I am able to do. And once again, if you are on Facebook, come on over here. Let me jump back into the chat again. J.S. Clay is almost done with Unit 2 in the Outer Circle. Awesome. Excellent work, my friend. Kelly Malloy. Shout out to Kelly Malloy from Washington. I'm glad you enjoy my work. All right, guys. So remember that we are going to have a live stream on Thursday. So be there for our live stream on Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Make sure that you are subscribed. Ralph says, your teachings are the best I've ever heard. Thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that, my friend. Patricia says, thank you. These streams have taught me a ton, and they make lockdown bearable. So happy to hear that. I'm going to have some new videos coming out this week. One of them will be about hell. So make sure you keep your eye out and look forward to that. And a lot more videos and a lot more stuff coming out very, very soon. So I'm extremely excited about the next book reading. Make sure you are there. This book, it's going to be wild, that's for sure. It's going to be really good. To be honest, this book is sort of just preparing one for the next, for what is to come. Okay, my friends, I am going to have to go here. I have videos to film and things to do, but I'm so glad. I love these book nights so much. I'm so glad you're all here. And yeah, this was our final reading of the Kybalion. We did it. We got through it. And I can't wait for next Monday as we continue reading with a book by the Pythagorean Illuminati, which is going to be extremely interesting and extremely intriguing. And I can't wait to see everyone there. A big shout out to everyone, all the supporters. Oh, by the way, I just want to say, remember we do have secret live streams every week. If you want to be a part of the secret live streams, support on Patreon. I'll put the link in the comments right now. Our secret live streams are every week. If you want to be a part of that, support at patreon.com. Link is in the comments right below. Just look up MorgueOfficial. That's me. That's the best way to support, and you will be able to be a part of the secret live stream. All right, my friends, look forward to next week's live reading, a book by the Pythagorean Illuminati, and I can't wait to see you all there. I'll see you next week, my friends. My name is Morgue, and I am Hyperion. Ad Astra, to the stars.